There is a lie in the real estate industry that keeps new investors broke for decades. The lie is that you need door volume or a certain number of doors, like 20, 30, 50 doors or units, before you can quit your job. I'm here to tell you that if you follow that advice, you're most likely going to run out of money before you ever get to quit your job. I replaced my six-figure pharmacist salary with just 5 houses, and I didn't do anything that required being a genius. I just exploited a very specific inefficiency in the rental market that 90% of real estate investors are afraid to touch or are just too lazy to touch. Let me show you my rent by the room system. First, let's go over why traditional rentals don't work anymore. I had a colleague who bought an expensive property in the San Francisco Bay Area, and she actually ridiculed me on what I was doing with my properties. She asked me, "Why are you buying so many cheap properties in Stockton, California? Doesn't that city have the highest crime rate?" Ha! Enjoy getting stabbed. I countered her, "Well, let's see. About how much cash flow are your Bay Area properties making?" She admitted to me, "Well, actually not very much, maybe just a couple $100 a month in cash flow." And then she said, "Well, that's only because the house was pricey, my interest rate was high, and I'm actually really just getting money through appreciation instead." That's when I said, exactly. That's why I do what I do. I wanted to maximize cash flow, so I purchased as close to a top college campus as I could. This one happened to be where I went to pharmacy school. I planned to rent out that property to pharmacy, dental students, and other college students. When I ran my numbers on that very first property, I thought I made a mistake on my calculator. Normally, the property would rent out for $2,000 a month, because it was a 3-bedroom property. However, when I looked at the floor plan, I imagined myself dividing the living room and family room to create 3 extra bedrooms. Suddenly, that exact same address was making $3,750 a month. It wasn't a different property, it was just a different layout. That's when I realized that most landlords are wasting 50% of their product by renting out to only one tenant versus multiple tenants. More tenants meant more profit. In this case, I was about doubling the amount of rental income versus what I would have had normally. Now, my immediate goal wasn't to become the richest person in California or anything like that. I just wanted to replace my pharmacist salary so that I could have financial freedom. And if I had just 5 of these rentals, each making $2,000 a month in net cash flow, then that would be $10,000 a month or 6 figures a year. So let's get into the exact system that I used to replace my pharmacist salary and retire at the age of 31. The first question I ask myself is, what college should I choose to invest nearby? Well, obviously, you don't want to invest at a college and have a bunch of party tenants trashing your house. So that's why I Google the US News Top Colleges report for whatever state I'm thinking of investing in. Because those are the colleges that will be top colleges that will bring in the best students who will end up being more responsible tenants for you. Another tool I like to use is AI. So I will go to ChatGPT or Grok and I'll ask it, give me a list of top colleges in cities where the median home price is within my budget range. So maybe my budget range is between $200,000 to $350,000 for a house. I'll plug that into the AI tool and it will come up with a list of maybe 20 different colleges and cities I could invest in. Next, what I want to do is what I call finding the golden circle. This is super simple. The golden circle is found by drawing a 0.7 to 1 mile radius around the college campus, and that becomes your buy zone. What's the psychology behind this? Well, college students love to procrastinate, and most of them wake up 10 to 15 minutes before their 8 a.m. classes to get to class. And so if you buy a property that's 15 minutes drive away from the school, then you might as well be on the moon in terms of college student housing. So instead, what I do is I pull up Google Maps and then I will right click on the map and then click on measure distance. You're going to want to put your first point on the college itself and then the second point somewhere on the map. and then you can drag that second point to see how far away it is from the first point until you get to about 1 mile. That then becomes the radius of the circle around the campus where you're going to want to stay within that to buy your houses. Basically, the radius of the golden circle. Once you find a house in that zone, I use a trick called the rule of 300 to see if investors are leaving money on the table. Most people will walk into a 1,500 square foot home and see just a 3-bedroom house. However, I'll walk in and I'll see a 5-bedroom house. The math is pretty simple. Every 300 square foot equals 1 bedroom. So if you have a 1,500 square foot house, that equals 5 bedrooms because 1,500 divided by 300 is 5. If a house has huge living rooms and hallways, that's just wasted dead space. Instead, what you can do is just by putting up a wall, you can create that extra bedroom, which gives you an extra $700 per month or more in rental income. And so you turn that dead space into profit. But there is a limit to how far you can push this. I learned this the hard way. I thought I hit a jackpot when I found a 10-bedroom house. To me, it was 10 paying tenants under a single roof. My eyes lit up with greed. Unfortunately, just 2 months after the 10 tenants moved into the house, the property manager walked into the house and she called me up in panic. She was like, "Ryan, the house smells like somebody died in here." And sure enough, the house was in chaos. The refrigerator had moldy food and spoiled milk. The sink had piles of rotting dishes. You can tell that there was a turf war going on because all the shelves had somebody's name on it. But the actual moment when I knew I had failed was when I opened up an email. The email said, "Ryan, I can't take this anymore. The mess is unbearable. If you don't fix this, I'm going to have to break my lease." That's when I realized that my greed created a slum. Because when 10 tenants use 1 kitchen, the tragedy of the commons really takes over. I realized my mistake. I needed to create a new golden rule. And the rule stated that the cap on the number of tenants at a single unit is 6. 7 tenants is really pushing it, and usually 8 or more tenants is unbearable and unsustainable. Now, how do I actually add bedrooms to a house? It's actually pretty simple. If you have a living room, a family room, and a dining room, you can turn 2 of those into bedrooms just by putting in bedroom furniture. And if you want to divide a living room in half, all you have to do is put up some framing, drywall, and a doorway, which is usually super cheap and super simple to do. And that's pretty much it. Now, a lot of people ask me, "Ryan, with that many tenants, doesn't it become a management nightmare? Or don't you have to hire a property manager and pay them thousands of dollars to manage it for you?" After all, I personally have 90 tenants at my rental properties that I serve. So how do I do this? Well, the key is to have the right people and the right systems. For example, I have like a house mom, house dad, house supervisor who I have go in to check on the house from time to time. And I will pay them on a case-by-case basis. For example, if they do a house tour, I will pay them $35. And if they host what I call a town hall meeting, I will pay them $60. Now, a town hall meeting is super important. That's where the house supervisor, facilitator, gets all of the housemates together to discuss how they're going to divide up the chores and take care of common household issues. For example, one common issue that comes up is the internet going down. Instead of me having to call up the internet provider and going back and forth with the provider and the tenant and being kind of like the middleman to troubleshoot the issue, instead what I do is I put the tenant's name underneath the account and have the tenant call the internet provider directly to troubleshoot and fix the issue. That way, I cut out the middleman, which is myself, and I'm empowering my tenants to take responsibility to take care of issues around the house. Now, as you can see, the rent by the room strategy is super powerful. However, there are 3 deal killers. And if I see these 3 deal killers or red flags on a house, I'll run away quickly from that deal in the other direction. Let's go through the 3 deal killers. Deal killer, or red flag number 1, is zoning issues. Some cities will actually cap how many unrelated tenants you can have at a single property. For example, I once called up the zoning department in Lubbock, Texas, and they told me that I could only have 2 unrelated tenants maximum at a property. Obviously, I didn't want to take the risk and go into that market because at any time a neighbor who was upset could easily call up the zoning department and complain, and then I would have to evict my tenants. So make sure your city doesn't have any major restrictions on how many unrelated tenants you can have at a property. Red flag number 2 is one that not a lot of investors think about, but will most certainly affect you as a student housing provider, and that is college enrollment trends. If the college's enrollment trends are downtrending versus uptrending, I recommend not investing nearby that college. The reason is there's a supply-demand mismatch where the number of students supply is decreasing while the housing supply stays the same. And that means less students for the same number of houses, which means you're less likely to be able to fill your student rental as quickly. So I always look for an uptrending college enrollment for wherever I'm investing in. Otherwise, you end up with a vacant house and having to pay the mortgage out of your own pocket. Red flag number 3 is having high neighborhood crime rates. You can have everything perfect about the house. It could be newly remodeled, beautiful, very spacious. But if you live in a neighborhood with high crime rates, no parent is going to want their child to live there. Even if the walk from the house to the campus passes through an unsafe area, the parent's not going to want their child to live there. So what I do is very simple, is I do the walk test, where I'll walk or have the real estate agent walk from the house to the campus and see if they feel comfortable on that walk. If they feel uncomfortable at all, then I know I shouldn't invest there. Okay, now let's talk about where this rent by the room strategy really shines and where it doesn't. If you're an investor who wants a completely passive investment where you don't have to do any of the work, then this investment's not for you. If you're that type of investor, then I recommend investing in an REIT, which is a real estate investment trust instead. Now, the returns for that are usually much lower, like 5% or less even, but it would be completely passive. However, if you're an investor who wants full control over your portfolio, a lot of say in how much profit you're going to be making, and you want to be able to retire with just 4 or 5 properties in your portfolio, then this strategy is definitely for you. I was working a full-time job as a pharmacist and slowly purchased 1 property per year on the side until it came to a point where I fully replaced my pharmacist salary and was able to retire at the age of 31. So that's why I believe anybody who wants to build a real estate empire on the side of working their W-2 job, this strategy is really great for them. In fact, I've taught over 70 students already on how to use this real estate investing strategy, most of whom were full-time W-2 workers, and were able to make $1,500 to $2,000 to $2,500 per month on their very first property by implementing this student housing strategy. So, of course, I know it works. Imagine just owning 5 of these properties, each making $2,000 a month. That means your net total cash flow after 5 properties would be $10,000 a month, which is 6 figures. And so it's not super difficult to get to a point where your W-2 job becomes optional by investing in real estate with this specific strategy, of course. Now, looking at these numbers, $10,000 a month, it's very easy to get excited and think that I need to quit my job so I can just focus on this, on building this. Don't do that. That's the second biggest mistake that newbie real estate investors will make. They think that the 9-to-5 job is the enemy to their freedom, when actually your W-2 can be your biggest accelerator. What you want to do is take that W-2 income and put it into something called a wealth multiplier. I'll break down what a wealth multiplier is and how it works with your W-2 to lead to early financial freedom in this video up here. Go ahead and click on that link and I'll see you in there.